Imagine a world where love knows no color, yet reality often paints a different, harsher picture. Amara Wilson, with her heart full of dreams and a trunk brimming with hopes, stood on the platform of the Riverbrook station. Her elegant hat, once a symbol of her anticipation, now seemed a mere mockery against the backdrop of her crushing humiliation. Harold Pierce, the man she had exchanged passionate letters with for 6 months, stared at her, his face drained of color as if he had seen a specter in the daylight. "This isn't going to work," he managed to stammer, his voice quivering with an unspoken truth. Amara, with a heart as heavy as the steam engine that had brought her here, finished his sentence. "You didn't mention that you were black." 3 weeks of travel, a journey fueled by the promise of a new life, away from the bigotry of the bustling city, now lay shattered at her feet. Harold, his bouquet wilting in his sweaty grasp, stepped back as if to distance himself from the reality he had unwittingly invited. "Couldn't you have warned me?" he asked, his voice a mix of confusion and accusation. Amara inhaled deeply, her dignity like a cloak she pulled tighter around her. "Warn you of what, Harold? That my skin is as dark as the night, but my emotions are as vivid and real as yours. You never inquired." The small town of Riverbrook, with its quaint charm, now felt like a stage where Amara, a well-dressed black woman, was unwittingly performing the role of the rejected. Harold, ever mindful of his standing in the community and his business, muttered about his precarious position. "You have to understand my reputation," the town. He offered her a ticket back, a meager consolation for a dream deferred. Amara felt a cold shiver, not of sadness, but of a quiet, seething anger. This was not just about her. It was about every soul who dared to dream beyond the lines drawn by society. In his heartfelt letters, Harold had poured out the solitary existence of a 45-year-old widower, yearning for companionship, for someone to understand him, for another chance at love. Never once did he mention that this heart had a color preference. "I've spent all I have to come here," she confessed, her voice unwavering, despite the storm brewing inside her. "I have no place to return to." Harold, with a gesture of kindness, reached into his pocket, retrieving a handful of crumpled bills. "This should suffice for a few nights' stay until you sort things out," he offered, his voice laced with concern. But then, like a bolt from the blue, a deep, authoritative voice sliced through the charged atmosphere. "Is that your solution, Pierce Toss? Money at the problem and hope it vanishes as you always do?" From behind Harold emerged a towering figure, his sharp gaze pinning the merchant down, who seemed to diminish under the scrutiny. His attire was simple, yet bespoke the kind of understated elegance only the affluent could afford. His suntanned face spoke of a life lived under open skies, yet his bearing radiated an unmistakable air of command. "This is none of your affair," Harold retorted, though his voice trembled with uncertainty. "It becomes my affair when I see a man I've known for 15 years acting the coward." The man named Maxwell countered, his eyes softening as they met Amara's. "Miss, allow me to introduce myself. Alexander Maxwell. I own a property just outside the city." Amara's nod was stiff, her suspicion ingrained from years of learning that kindness from strangers often carried a hidden cost. "If I may be so bold," Alexander continued, "I offer you a room in my home until you decide what's next. We have guest quarters that rarely see use, and my housekeeper would welcome the company." Harold's face contorted a mix of relief and discomfort as he watched the scene unfold. "Maxwell, you can't be serious." The words burst from Harold, laced with disbelief and a hint of fear. What would society think? Alexander's smile was chilling, not touching the icy depths of his eyes. "The very people who conduct business with me each day, who rely on my lands for their sustenance, what would they say?" His voice was smooth, yet it carried an edge that made Harold reconsider his stance, his cheeks growing pale as he realized the weight of his words. Alexander Maxwell was no mere farmer. He was the landowner, the master of half the fertile fields in the region. Yet what remained a mystery to everyone at the station was the secret. Amara carried a secret as heavy as the trunk of clothes she brought, which would tip the scales of power in their small community, making Harold rue the day he let prejudice cloud his judgment. As the carriage approached the Maxwell estate, Amara's eyes widened. This was no simple farm. It was a grand Victorian mansion, its magnificence only outdone by the sprawling plantations and verdant pastures where majestic horses roamed. The estate was a testament to wealth and power, its grandeur almost overwhelming. Alexander, with a gesture towards the mansion, explained, The people here, they're not accustomed to change. His voice carried a note of resignation as he continued. Riverbrook was built by families clinging to the past. Harold Pierce is merely a symptom of a deeper malaise. Upon their arrival, Mrs. Foster, the housekeeper, greeted Amara with a professional nod. Her eyes, kind yet guarded, flickered with a momentary surprise at the sight of a black guest. Yet her posture remained stiff, her demeanor courteous, perhaps pondering the implications of this unexpected visitor. What stories would unfold within these walls? What changes would this woman, with her secrets and her strength, bring to the heart of Riverbrook? As they traversed the opulent corridors adorned with masterpieces and relics of times past, the lady of the house, with a voice that carried the warmth of a summer's breeze, announced, "I've prepared the blue room for you, Amara. It boasts the finest view of the garden." Her words were like a gentle nudge guiding Amara through the labyrinth of luxury. That evening, dinner was served in the grand dining hall, where Alexander, with the solemnity of a historian recounting ancient tales, shared his lineage. He was the progeny of a northern banker and a passionate teacher whose life was dedicated to the abolitionist cause. His inheritance was not merely wealth, but also a legacy of unwavering principles about equality. 15 years prior, when he settled in Riverbrook, whispers of eccentricity trailed him. Too affluent to be shunned, yet too unconventional to be fully embraced, he carved a niche for himself amidst the town's elite. "And what of your story, Miss Wilson?" Alexander inquired, his eyes reflecting a genuine curiosity after detailing his own ventures. "Your letters must have left an indelible impression on Harold for him to extend such an invitation." Amara, touched by his forthright manner, found herself emboldened to speak. "I was a teacher in Boston," she began, her voice soft yet clear. "I taught literature and history to girls of color until the school closed its coffers empty. That was when I knew I had to seek a new beginning." She paused, her mind flickering to the true impetus behind her correspondence. The unexpected bequest from her grandfather, a butler, whose life was spent in service to the affluent. This inheritance included not just gold coins preserved with meticulous care, but also ancient documents with the potential to alter the destiny of lands in Riverbrook. Documents she concealed within a secret compartment of her trunk. In the days that followed, Alexander provided Amar with a rare gift, the freedom to ponder. The mansion's library, a repository of wisdom, became her sanctuary. She delved into volumes on local history, geography, and the intricate laws governing the region. When questioned about her pursuits, she would merely smile, her eyes alight with the thrill of discovery, and say, "I am simply broadening my horizons." A mere week following her mysterious arrival, whispers of Amara's presence had ignited the gossiping flames of the quaint town. The Maxwell mansion, usually a place of quietude, now buzzed with an influx of visitors. Oh, how the curious townsfolk flocked, neighboring wives, local merchants, and even the Reverend himself, all suddenly afflicted with urgent matters that necessitated a visit to Alexander. "Behold the spectacle," Alexander exclaimed during a delicate afternoon tea right after a particularly transparent delegation had taken their leave. "You've become the town's latest attraction, and you haven't even ventured into the village." Amara's smile was tinged with a bittersweet irony. "I've always been an attraction, Mr. Maxwell," she remarked, her voice a soft echo of her inner turmoil. "The only difference now is that I hold a porcelain teacup amidst the scrutiny." It was amidst these curious visits that Harold Pierce, with his hat clutched nervously in his hands, finally mustered the courage to appear at the mansion. His face was a canvas of feigned concern, his greeting to Maxwell a stutter of unease. I've come to check on Miss Wilson's comfort," he managed. Absolutely delighted," Alexander responded with a dry, cutting tone. "Why not ask her yourself?" Harold's expression turned to one of discomfort as Amara entered her presence, transformed by the elegance of a dress Mrs. Foster had tailored. No longer the weary, humiliated figure from the station, she now moved with a grace and confidence that belied her past. "Mr. Pierce," she greeted with an icy politeness. "What an unexpected delight." Harold fidgeted, his hat now a fidget toy in his anxious hands. The community is concerned for your well-being," he stammered. "How kind of them," Amara replied, her voice laced with sarcasm. She turned to Harold, her gaze piercing. "What about my situation, Mr. Pierce?" Harold's eyes darted to Alexander, seeking some form of rescue. It's not proper for an unmarried woman, especially one of color, to remain in the residence of an unmarried man." he finally blurted out. Alexander's voice was a soft, dangerous whisper. Go on, Pierce. I'm dying to hear how you plan to conclude that thought. Swallowing his fear, Harold continued. The church committee is considering options to help her return to Boston. A collection is being organized. Amara's smile was a mask beautiful yet devoid of warmth as she awaited what might follow the town's judgment, hanging in the balance, like the delicate porcelain cup in her hand. How generous indeed. But my dear Harold, my plans have taken an unexpected turn. I intend to stay in Riverbrook indefinitely. Harold's eyes widened to saucers, disbelief etched across his face. That's impossible. You don't know a soul here, you have no job, no family. With a serene smile, Amara countered. Oh, but I do have a job, Harold. Mr. Maxwell has graciously offered me the position of librarian on his estate. It seems the Maxwell family has amassed books for generations, yet never found the time to organize them properly. Harold's gaze shifted to Alexander, a storm of shock and barely contained fury brewing in his eyes. You can't be serious, he exclaimed. Alexander, with a nonchalant shrug, affirmed, I've never been more serious in my life. Miss Wilson is both educated and capable. My library has never been in better hands. Harold, stumbling through increasingly weak protests, failed to grasp the profound significance of Amara's new role. The Maxwell Library was not merely a repository of literature, but a treasure trove of land records, legal documents, and the entire chronicle of the region containing secrets that many traditional families would rather remain buried. As Harold stormed out defeated and seething, Alexander observed from the window, his voice tinged with concern. He'll try to make your life difficult, he remarked. The slight to his ego today will not be easily forgotten. Amara's eyes sparkled with a newfound resolve. Let him try, she declared. While he busies himself with petty rumors, I'll be delving into depths he could never fathom. What Harold Pierce, and indeed all of Riverbrook, could not anticipate was that Amara's time in the library served a very particular purpose. Amidst the yellowed documents and dust-laden records, she was meticulously assembling a puzzle that would unveil an uncomfortable truth. The founding families of Riverbrook, including the Pierces, had built their wealth upon land that was not rightfully theirs. And as local society buzzed with whispers and rumors about the new librarian, Amara's mission was clear: to unearth the hidden history of Riverbrook, no matter the cost. 2 weeks had passed since Amara, the woman of color residing at the Maxwell Mansion, had begun orchestrating a revelation that would soon send shockwaves through the very foundations of their community. The small hall of Riverbrook's town hall was now bursting at the seams, filled to the brim with the town's founding families, local merchants and farmers who had journeyed from far and wide, drawn by an emergency summons. In the eye of this storm stood Harold Pierce, his arms flailing wildly, his face a canvas of indignation. It's an outrage, he bellowed, his voice echoing with fury. Maxwell dares to defy our traditions by harboring that woman on his land. Decent families are whispering about unseemly conduct. Murmurs of agreement cascaded through the crowd like a wave, only to be silenced as the doors swung open with a dramatic flourish. Alexander Maxwell stepped in his presence, commanding, followed by Amara Wilson, who carried herself with the poise and grace of royalty. A palpable hush enveloped the room. I thank you for the invitation. Alexander's voice, steady and resonant, filled the hall. However, I must clarify a misunderstanding. Miss Wilson is not here merely as my guest, but as the legal representative of an issue that affects us all. Harold let out a nervous laugh. Legal representative, a woman of color with neither education nor authority. Maxwell, are you out of your mind? With meticulous care, Amara opened her briefcase, her movements deliberate and calm. On the contrary, Mr. Pierce, in addition to my credentials as a certified teacher, I hold legal power of attorney as a direct descendant of Joseph Freeman. The name fell like thunder, striking fear and curiosity into the hearts of the assembly. Joseph Freeman doesn't exist, Harold retorted, his voice quick and sharp. He's nothing but an urban legend. Is that so? Amara responded, her tone laced with intrigue, as she produced aged yellow documents from her case. Then why do I have here the original deed signed by the governor in 1866, which grants Joseph Freeman, my great-grandfather, a man liberated after the Civil War, the land that now comprises nearly 60% of Riverbrook, including your store, Mr. Pierce, As Judge Thornton adjusted his glasses, peering intently at the documents, the room held its breath, the air thick with the weight of history and the promise of change. Harold's spectacles hovered over the documents Amara now laid before him, his eyes narrowing in scrutiny. This looks authentic, he murmured, his voice quivering with a mix of disbelief and dread. It's a forgery, Harold bellowed, though his shout lacked conviction, his voice betraying his inner turmoil. Unshaken, Amara proceeded. The corroborating records are right here, she said calmly. She detailed the harrowing tale of Joseph Freeman, forced into flight after surviving attempted lynchings in 1870, and how the founding families had greedily carved up his land, establishing what they pompously named the Riverbrook Property Committee. Alexander interjected with a thoughtful tone. The Maxwell Library archives all regional land records. How peculiar that the records from 1870 to 1872 were missing until Miss Wilson discovered cross-references elsewhere. An elderly Reverend Miller, his head bowed in contemplation, spoke softly. My father spoke of this tale. He said it was a sin buried deep. His voice was heavy with the weight of history. We are not here to condemn the descendants for their ancestors' misdeeds, Amara declared with a firm resolve. I propose we establish a community foundation, one that will uplift all Riverbrook citizens, focusing on education and affordable housing. Harold's nervous laughter cut through the tension. That's preposterous. No one will fall for this charade. Just then, Attorney Jeff, a lawyer renowned across 3 states, entered the hall, his presence commanding attention. The documents have been verified by the State Historical Records Commission, he announced with authority. They are indeed authentic, and I am pleased to inform you that the lawsuit has been officially filed. The hall erupted into a cacophony of raised voices and heated exchanges. Amidst the uproar, Harold, his face contorted with fury, lunged at Amara. You planned this from the start, didn't you? He hissed venomously. That's what you were hiding in your letters. Amara, her composure unwavering, responded, No, Mr. Pierce. In those letters, I was merely a lonely woman seeking friendship. It was your immediate rejection upon seeing me that revealed your true character, the same kind of man who would judge my great-grandfather, just as you judged me for nothing more than the color of our skin. His pallor spoke volumes as he murmured, You're going to ruin us. Yet her voice, gentle as a lullaby, countered, No, Mr. Pierce, I am here to correct a historical injustice, to make amends in the fairest way for all. Their eyes locked, a silent storm of emotions swirling between them. You've lived with discrimination all your life, yet you do not wish for anyone to lose their home, not even me. His voice was a mixture of incredulity and defeat as he sank into his chair. The council members, with their measured steps and hushed whispers, retreated to ponder Amara's proposal. Alexander, his admiration unmistakable, approached her. You could have demanded everything. He whispered, his voice a soft caress against the tension of the room. And become just like those who stole from my great-grandfather. Amara's reply was firm, her eyes blazing, with a resolve that transcended personal vengeance. Justice, Alexander, is not about revenge. It's about restoration. In that pivotal moment, what none in that chamber could fathom was that Riverbrook's true metamorphosis was only just dawning. The whispers that would ripple through the halls of power for generations would not tell of a woman bent on destruction, but of one who, even when deeply wounded, chose to rebuild with grace and foresight. As Harold Pierce faced the crumbling of his once unassailable reputation, Amara Wilson and Alexander Maxwell shared a glance that spoke of futures unbound by the chains of past injustices, a look that envisioned a world where belonging was defined not by the color of one's skin, but by the content of their character. 6 months following that monumental assembly at City Hall, Riverbrook had undergone a remarkable transformation. The Freeman Foundation, funded by the restitution of historical wrongs, was now a beacon of hope, sponsoring scholarships for underprivileged youth and community enhancement initiatives. At the heart of this renaissance stood Amara, not as an avenger, but as a visionary who peered beyond her own pain. Harold Pierce's erstwhile store had been reborn as Riverbrook's inaugural public library, a sanctuary where silenced narratives could finally find their voice. Meanwhile, Harold himself had departed, leaving behind the town he could no longer call home. Following the revelation, Alexander sold his properties for a mere pittance and vanished into the night without a farewell. Gossip whispered that he had taken up a clerk's position in a nearby town, his pride as depleted as his bank account. You could have crushed him entirely. Alexander observed one crisp autumn day as they wandered through the gardens of her estate, now transformed into a cultural sanctuary. Most would have demanded every last cent. Amara, her eyes softening as she watched children frolic on what was once the sacred ground of the elite, smiled. Revenge would have sated me for but a fleeting moment, she mused, sweeping her arm to encompass the vibrant space around them. This will nurture satisfaction for generations to come. Word of the Freeman era spread like wildfire beyond Riverbrook, drawing in journalists and historians eager to document this beacon of historical land justice. Amara found herself invited to lecture at universities, sharing not just her tale, but the intricate legal tapestries she wove to reclaim truth from the shadows of deceit. During a jubilant dinner in the grand hall of Maxwell Mansion, now christened Freeman Maxwell House, Judge Thornton, with a voice trembling with heartfelt emotion, raised his glass in an impromptu toast. To the woman who showed us that justice isn't merely a legal concept but a way of life, he proclaimed. When Amara came to our town, we thought we had her pegged from her appearance alone. Oh, how profoundly and beautifully wrong we were. Beside him, Martha Webb, now the principal of the newly established community school, nodded in fervent agreement. And to think it all began with such a cruel dismissal at the train station. Alexander, taking Amara's hand in his, whispered with a tender smile, "The best decision Harold Pierce ever made was to reject you." Though he paused, doubt flickering in his eyes. On that tranquil evening in the heart of Riverbrook, where the old central square stood as a testament to tradition, a new chapter was being written. A modest bronze plaque, not a towering statue, had been installed, chronicling the tale of Joseph Freeman. His land, once unjustly seized, now served the community's greater good, a silent yet powerful symbol of redemption and unity. Amara, perched on her new porch, gazed out over the city as dusk turned to night. Once an outsider, her skin color and spirit deemed too bold for acceptance, she now stood as a beacon of respect. Not for yielding to the town's narrow expectations, but for her unwavering commitment to her values. As Alexander approached with 2 steaming cups of tea, their warmth mirroring the warmth in their hearts, Amara pondered the irony of her journey. "You know what's ironic," she mused aloud. "Harold rejected me because he couldn't envision a life shared with someone who didn't fit his mold. Yet that very rejection led to his downfall, while you, Alexander, flourished because of the very qualities he scorned: your strength, your heritage, your authenticity." The lesson that Riverbrook absorbed, destined to resonate through the ages, was clear yet deep. By judging on superficial traits, we not only reject the humanity of others, but also deprive ourselves of the profound contributions they could offer. Amara watched the moon ascend over the skyline of Riverbrook, the city that had once turned its back on her. She realized that true revenge wasn't about retribution against Harold Pierce. It was about creating something so magnificent, so just, and so enduring that his rejection would merely be a footnote in the grand narrative unfolding before her. What does it mean to truly belong? Can we find strength in our differences rather than division? Let our differences be not barriers, but the very sinews of strength that uplift and transform communities. Peace, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, share, or subscribe to join our journey of unity and empowerment.